Meeting of Amherst Township Trustees called to order. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Abraham?
Here.
Lynch?
Here.
Euring?
Yes.
Kish is also present. I have the meeting minutes from the October 12th regular meeting of the Amherst Township Trustees. The meeting was called to order at 7:03 p.m. by Lynch with a pledge to the flag. Roll call, Abraham, Lynch, Euring, and Kish were all present. Also in attendance, Case Marshall, Ashley, G. Lynch, R. Bechter, J. Delgado, C. Albright, and C. Freuhoff. 10-121, a motion by Euring, seconded by Abraham, to approve the minutes of the September 28th, 2021 regular meeting as read. All ayes. 10-221, a motion by Abraham, seconded by Euring, moved to approve the bills and financial reports with reservations. All ayes. Trustee Lynch welcomed Jose Delgado, Caitlin Albright, and Courtney Freuhoff from NOPEC for a short presentation. Amherst Township was chosen as a recipient of NOPEC's 2021 Green Ribbon Award and presented with a plaque and a check for $2,500 to put toward our energy efficiency lighting initiative. A short recess was called for a photo opportunity. Trustee Lynch then discussed expenditures of the American Rescue Plan Act Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. He noted packets contained the working document for 22 potential items we have identified for use of these funds. The notes section contains documentation if the assistant prosecutor has been contacted regarding the expense and also if we have received feedback from him regarding eligibility. Trustee Lynch highlighted a few items from the webinar regarding audit procedures. Out of the 2,196 non-entitlement eligible forms of government, only 1,910 have taken the action to receive the federal funds. Dollars not distributed will be redistributed. Trustee Lynch also noted that we are not going to hit the threshold that would distinguish the township to have a single federal audit versus every 2 years we have now. Also, to make sure that your ARPA funds set up for interest earnings go directly to your general fund. There was also some discussion regarding a procurement policy and having those for a future audit. Trustee Lynch will ask around to see if any other townships have this. Under correspondence, there were none. Under ambulance, there was nothing to report. Under zoning, no report. The BZA hearing is here at the Township Hall at 7 p.m. on October 21st, 2021. Fire inspector, Trustee Lynch noted that we received the Lorain County Specialized Rescue Response Contract for 2022 through the 2026 term. 10-321, a motion by Euring, seconded by Abraham. They moved to enter into the Lorain County Specialized Rescue Response Contract for 2022 through 2026 term. All ayes. Under Road, Park, and Cemetery, Road Superintendent Smarsh reported cemeteries and parks being maintained. Getting into leaf season, getting estimates for the box for the truck, and also estimates for grinding. Dumpsters have been delivered for the dumpster days, the 13th, 14th, and 15th. Trustee Lynch noted that Kevin and Linda are working on the ODOT Township Stimulus Program for resurfacing Oberlin Road from Middle Ridge to North Ridge Road. Trustee Lynch will be getting more information regarding this funding. The deadline has been extended till November 19th, 2021. Under Senior Services, Administrator Ashley noted it was open enrollment season. The playground equipment will hopefully be coming soon. It was supposed to be shipped October 11th. If we do not receive the equipment, we might need to ask for an extension of the grant. $1,500 sponsorship from NOPEC for this year and last year, so we have $3,000 to use towards that. Under new business, Trustee Euring noted that Policy Committee has been postponed until October 19th, 2021. The next regularly scheduled meeting will be October 26th, 2021 at 7 p.m. at the Amherst Township Hall. No work session scheduled at this time, but if Pete Zwick becomes available, a date may be set. 10-421, a motion by Euring, seconded by Abraham to adjourn at 8:13 p.m. All ayes.
Chris, I apologize. I didn't get these changes to you earlier, but one on the first page where it discusses the audits relative to the ARPA funds and the threshold. The single audit, it's not a federal audit, should just say single audit.
Got
so
it.
Cross out federal. And then under Senior Services, for Administrator Ashley's report, where you say she noted it was open enrollment season, if you could just add in for Medicare, just for clarity.
Where are we at there on that one? Federal on that one. Which was the second one?
under
For
senior
Medicare.
services for the first line before the period
Open enrollment season.
or Medicare. Are there any other changes or corrections to the October 12th meeting minutes?
I have none.
Okay, then can I have a motion to approve?
That's
I so
correct.
move.
Second.
Abraham,
Yes.
Euring,
Yes.
Lynch.
Yes.
Okay, then also this month, or the second half of the month, you have a copy of the credit card detail in your packets. There were quite a few charges this month because all the background checks that were going on for the rental go through the credit card. So that's where you would see quite a few of those.
Just so my colleagues are aware, and that gets reimbursed because there's a
Yes.
payment for the application, so that cost is all covered. Okay, with all the receipts available for every credit card transaction I'm going to make a motion that the credit card account transaction detail has been reviewed per policy, and the card statement is accepted as presented, subject to investigation.
I'll second that.
Lynch,
Yes.
Abraham,
Yes.
Euring.
Yes.
Okay, then you have the payment listing in front of you, which is pretty boilerplate. There's a couple of payrolls in there, the mid-year on 10/15, and then I just did payroll tonight. There is a larger amount on there from Game Time, but that is for the playground equipment, and we will get reimbursed for that with the grant dollars that we have coming for that.
That's under game time?
Yes. Otherwise, it's pretty much our normal monthly bills.
I'll make a motion that we accept the bills as presented.
I'll second. Pay the bills, accept the financial reports.
Abraham,
Yes.
Yuri,
Yes.
Lynch? Okay.
Sorry. And thank you for explaining the Game Time one, because that was
Sure.
the only one I marked. Okay, yes.
Thank you. Then lastly, I just guess I should have given you these numbers before you approved them, but our revenue to
That's what I'm
date
looking at.
is $1,555.67, and our expenditures are $762,420.73. And we did have our first expenditure come out of the ARPA funds, which was for All Pro Sewer.
What was that for? Oh, pro sewer cleaning.
Jetting,
Okay. Okay.
sewer on Hidden Valley Drive.
Okay.
And I just want to
That-
mention to the elected officials, there will be a need for an executive session later. But at that executive session, I'd like you to bring in your financial reports also. Okay, they'll be germane to the conversation. And I'll explain that in more detail later, Chris, with an actual motion when we go into it.
Okay.
Because I know you're not aware of it and
Okay.
what's going on. Okay, at this time, I'd like to welcome everyone in attendance. If anyone has anything to bring before the board, now would be the time. And for Chief Wilhelm, instead of waiting till the fire prevention officer report, now would be the time, so you're not stuck waiting here.
All right. I had discussed with you on the phone about Middle Ridge and 58.
Just so
Putting-
you're aware, I've had no discussion with my fellow trustees. When you and I talked was as
Yes.
a result of that email that Linda had sent me. Okay, so explain to them what it's about.
Yeah, well, I actually put a package together. It's, what this is a traffic preemption system. And it's donated by using a siren in a truck. And if you've ever been around the traffic lights and, like in Amherst City on 58, when a siren is hit and we're running towards the light, there's a speaker up there that picks the dB of the siren up, the decibels, and it actually turns the lights red 3 different directions. The light stays green in the direction that the fire vehicle is coming. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be fire. Police, state patrol, sheriff, ambulance, other fire, departments coming for mutual aid, they would use it. My thing is, 58 Middle Ridge is a very dangerous intersection. If we go across it a lot, we have to stop the vehicles and sometimes sit there and wait because people, they see your red lights, your siren going, and they're still going 50 miles an hour and they drive through the intersection just looking at you. They don't even think about hitting the brakes. So we have had accidents there in the past. Since I've been on the fire department, we've had 1 fire truck get hit there. However, there have been other accidents where the guy stops in front, the guy behind him's not paying attention, and he slams into him because we're sitting there with red lights and stuff going. However, this system seems to work. We have them on Route 58 at Cleveland Avenue, we have them at Route 2, we have them at Kresge Drive, we have them at Cooper Foster. And we hit those things, and there's a warning light that comes on in white, a flashing light that tells everybody, uh-oh, something's going on here. And then all of a sudden it'll turn red 3 different ways. So the cross traffic's red, and then the one opposite of you turns red. That stops all traffic, and you proceed through. That doesn't mean that the fire truck or the ambulance, police car, sheriff, state patrol, whatever, they still have to slow down going through there. I mean, that's a must. That's in our policy. We tell everybody, especially if there's nothing there, I recommend that they all stop, period. Just stop, let your lights be seen, and then, But if the reaction of the preemptor works from a distance, which they do, it gives everybody time to stop, and you can proceed through with caution on a green light on your side. So what I did was, just so you understand, there's many different kinds of them. I put together a couple packages, and I'll let you guys have them to look at. There's also a big one that explains it, but I didn't make copies of it, but it's online. You can go look at them. But there are different kinds that they have. There's kinds that activate with a siren, and then there's kinds that activate with a system, an infrared light. There's kinds that activate through a computer, through GPS. Our recommendation is to use the siren one. That way, everybody, all the different agencies can use it. If you have just the one with the laser light, or infrared light, they call it, then everybody has to have that, which is kind of cost prohibitive. Some places we don't have the money to do it. Everybody has a siren, and the sirens work great. Either on a yoke, a high-low, and
What's it gonna cost?
I don't know. I'm working on it right now, Denny.
Okay.
One of the things that I'm working on is I got a hold of Joe Miller. He's our representative, and he told me to get some information together for him, and because right now the state's in the process on Route 58 Middle Ridge, they're changing those traffic lights. They're going to put those big metal horns up. And they look like elephant tusk to me. And they go over the intersection. They hang the lights on. Well, now would be the time to put the preemptor system up there while they're doing this. So I talked to him about it. And he says, get me the information. I also, right now, I already have a letter from the Amherst Police Department. I'm going to draft a letter. I'm going to call Life Care have Dave Richards draft a letter, Amherst PD, like I say, Amherst PD, the Sheriff's Department,
Deputy.
the State Patrol, and then we'll get Southern Lorraine County Ambulance, because they come through here every day.
To get to the hospital.
Central Lorraine County Ambulance out of Overland. I'll get a hold of the dude up there in Wellington, have him draft a letter. Again, whoever does Overland, I'll have them do it. Then also, I'm gonna do Overland Fire Department, because they're running mutual aid with us. I'm gonna get a letter from them and Carlisle too.
Good, I
And
appreciate
South
it.
Amherst, so.
Yeah, and just so for Denny and David, and I think now Chief Wilhelm's hit on it, the real impetus that started this conversation right now was that the chief happened to see ODOT out at the intersection of State Route 58 and Middle Ridge, and so he approached them to see what was going on. And that's when he found out they were going to put in new traffic signals. That's why he said, for that particular intersection, now would be the time, because it's, not only do you have the installation of this equipment, but you have the wiring and the control box that has to be done. So if they're already going to be doing this, that might keep the costs down. To your question on cost, Denny, the other thing is that he's talked about Representative Miller, who's our representative here in Amherst Township. Our discussion was to talk with Representative Miller and State Senator Manning to look at this, because it's not just the fire department, it's all the other safety forces that Chief Wilhelm's mentioned here. And then the township doesn't, since it has to be with the traffic signals, we actually don't have one traffic signal under our authority. They're either county or state. So that's why we were hoping that they'd be willing to put them in as they're going through the upgrades, with the key being this intersection, but the chiefs also mentioned at State Route 113 and 58. We also discussed the intersections as you go over to the State Route 2 on Middle Ridge, and there's two of them there that we have now, the one at West Ridge, in addition to the interchanges themselves that are going through. Now, realize in the lights turning red in 3 directions and green in 1, it does more than allowing the safety group to get through, but it also clears traffic, because if these guys come up, like the intersection they're at, there's a left turn lane. Even if the lights, you know, they can change it to green, but they need those people to move. It's not like they can necessarily easily maneuver around them, you know, and with a few toots of the horn, which, you know, is something you can really hear. Yes. I think people get the message, but now they can clear through more safely because everybody else has stopped. And the flashing light, and if we're able to get these, we can put some information, even to start notifying our own residents. We know there's many people from outside the township, but to understand when they see that, and if you've got the green light, get out of their way, you know, to clear it so that they can go through. But I did tell the chief, I'm sure that between David and Denny, our trustees would agree to this, you know, as long as it's not cost prohibitive, and that's why we're hoping this is something that can be covered through the state as they're going through the upgrades. And the chief would set the priority as far as the intersections that have the most traffic going through for the safety forces. Obviously, they go through all of them, but we know our fire trucks, just because of where fire service comes from, this one, to get to the township east of the city, you're pretty much coming through that one most of the time. And with the newer development coming in, it's hard to say. It depends upon where the issue is going to be. They're still going to have to come through that intersection, even if they head south on 58. So that's the whole reason, and I didn't mention it to either of you guys ahead of time because Chief Wilhelm wasn't sure if he could get all the information together prior to this meeting and if he'd be here or not. But I'm glad he's given us something that we can hold and review. But
My goal now is to get a hold of those agencies and get.
I'm really glad you went forward in doing that and already talked with Representative Miller.
Yes.
A rough cost, though, that's not for us, realize the city, where they're responsible for their own traffic lights, and, you know, they actually had one, it cost them upwards of $10,000 to put in one, which is very
I had to
expensive.
pay that out of my budget.
Yeah.
58 in North Ridge.
Yeah, but, even with this, I mean, we'll see how it is. I think, depending upon what the state puts through on this, we might be able to do partial or as a joint thing if everybody
No.
that enters into
I
it.
have looked into some of the pricing, and generally, you're looking at, depending on the one that you pick. And I don't know what the state has, whether the state has just one that they, approve of. I know Elyria has the infrared. They have lights on their fire truck, and when they go out, like 113 and 57, they turn that light on, and that light actually hits that thing. But they're the only ones that can use it.
Right, it requires a control module in every single vehicle,
Yes.
and we don't want to do that. We
No.
want to make this more universal so that
So
any of the
everybody can
safety
use it,
forces
yeah.
come through. Correct.
And,
Yeah.
I, like I said before, I like to be counterproductive rather than reactive. I don't want to wait till something happens and then, geez, we should have done this, just the way I like doing business.
Yeah. Well, you've already then, if you've contacted State Rep Joe Miller, that's a big start, and I would hope between him and Senator Manning, and they may actually be doing this or had communication
that-
from other communities.
Well, like Lorraine, every time Lorraine puts something up now, they're out, they just put new lights up there by Lowe's and that, and they got them on. They just put that light set up at Gager Road and, Colby Road. They got them on there, so.
What's Lorraine using?
Huh?
What's Lorraine using? Are they using sound or are they using?
Sound, yeah. Yeah, 'cause we actually, when we go down 58, they're going downhill a little bit, they're going north on 58 off of Cleveland Avenue and North Ridge, and we hit those things. Down there where you go into Myers, there's one there. We actually flipped that one to green from our way, even though we don't go down into Lorraine unless we're going on Mutual Aid call with them. We turn on Cooper Foster one way or the other, and it'll turn that one down there. So, I mean, they don't stay on that long. As soon as the siren, is gone from it, it stays like maybe 15, 20 more seconds, and then it goes back to normal.
Back to the,
It's not like you're repeating traffic, for long periods of time.
Well, I can tell you right now, I would be in support of it. It's a safety issue, and I think it's something that we need to do, and I'd be willing to chip in somewhat financially, so I'm for it, okay?
Okay, yeah.
And that's what we've got to find
out.
out from the state, what the options are.
Yeah, I have, in the past, I've tried to reach out to them, I think it was last winter, but I got people on vacation, and I never got the call return, which they didn't really pursue it.
Yeah, but the
Now
key
that-
is
now that
that
I've got
you got
Randy-
motivation, because they're going to put new lights in.
Yes.
So
Yes, so,
that,
yeah.
there's nothing like moving a project along but a deadline. All right, well, I appreciate it, Chief Wilhelm, and this helps so that
I think we should
the trustees have something to read through here to gain a better understanding.
We have a mutual aid structure fire, we have.
Okay.
Sheffield Township.
All right,
Okay, thank you. Thank you both.
well, that's where it would have helped to have those lights
Thank-
there on Middle Ridge and West Ridge and the Route 2 intersection, because that's what they're going right now. Think about it, they're going to run right through Middle Ridge and 58, then they're going to hit West Ridge and Middle Ridge, and then the next two lights to get through the Route 2 interchange to get to Sheffield.
yeah, I think there's two variables to look at here, First is, whose light it is, and if we can get them to chip in on it because it's their light. Or, and the second thing is, look at the costs. The cost isn't too bad. We do the other lights in the township. I believe we got 6 stoplights in the township.
But none are township owned.
None of them
They're
are
either county
or state.
So
County or state.
it's got to be worked between them, and knowing that, realize that that $10,000 figure, that's where you're starting right from the get-go with the city footing the full bill. It was a key intersection. It wasn't a matter of lights happen to be updated. If you're doing it at a time when you're also putting up new lights and setting a control box, your costs are going to be much lower because you're already there taking care of it. But I think this is something that now needs to be looked at even statewide, because you're seeing this more and more in the communities.
They just put
showing
one,
up.
they just put a brand new one up over on Broadway and that main, not the main road, 254 and Broadway.
54?
Yeah, you see they got them, I think it's the speaker kind that they put up there.
They are. For Lorraine, they are. And these guys will be going through that right now to get to Sheffield.
Right, so when they did it, they did a really nice job. They got it all up real nice.
Okay, yeah, technology is really in many ways improving things, so
Oh, yeah.
there are some good things. Okay, we'll move back to the regular agenda. I just didn't want to hold those guys up, and it worked out good since they got toned out, so.
Yeah, it did.
Or we would have missed the whole thing. Okay, we're going to go back with the, if you look in your packet on the next item under 5B, this is with the American Rescue Plan Act expenditures. I didn't bring an update of the list we're keeping. So the one you received at the last meeting, that's reasonably current. But the U.S. Senate just passed a bill. It's 3011, and you have a document explaining this. And this is where the prosecutor's office, specifically Assistant Prosecutor Dan Petticourt, has said, hey, don't be in a rush on this, because he does expect things to change just as they did in the CARES Act. Though the Senate's passed this, it's now over to the House for concurrence. But if this goes through, it'll make it considerably easier versus all the detail we're putting together in trying to show the justification for these expenditures, making sure they comply with the current guidelines set by the bill in the U.S. Treasury, and being prepared for our future state audit. Well, you can see with this, obviously we're not in that $10 million range, we're not even in a $1 million range, but the second bullet point, which would be the real key, is allow the greater of $10 million or 30% of the total ARPA allocation, that's American Rescue Plan Act allocation, provided to a locality to be used under a new separate provision that further allows infrastructure-related activities authorized under federal surface transportation laws or Title I of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974. A lot of words there, but essentially, Kevin, this is road projects. And, 30% for us, that would be like roughly $90,000 the first year, $90,000 the second year. And if
It says, if I read this correctly, it says the greater of, so you could spend up to $10 million.
Yeah.
Or, and
You gotta-
we're not gonna spend $10 million, we only have what?
Yeah, what you
So
got to
we could
do
spend
is,
it all, you could spend it all, because the 30% of that's 180,000, so you spend 180,000 or 10 million. Well, we only got 600, we could spend 600, so that's the greater of. That's the way I read it. If I'm wrong, am I wrong?
what you have to do, and I would suggest, I don't know, do you get the Ohio Township Association legislative alerts? Did you
Yeah.
sign up for those?
Yeah, I get that.
Okay, in there, David, it'll make it easier for you versus searching at the U.S. Senate bills, is click on the link for Senate Bill 3011 and that alert and read through the detail. But the reality is this will make it much easier. I mean, even if you go to the first bullet point, is allow localities to allocate up to 10 million of the ARPA funds for the provision of government services without using complicated budgetary analysis to calculate lost revenue, while at the same time retaining the original provision of the law that would allow for a higher amount to be used if justified under the Treasury's revenue loss calculator. realize what that is that the Treasury allows you to use the baseline year as the year prior to COVID, which would be our budget year of 2019, which for us is also calendar year 2019. And then look at what the growth is for 2020, if you had any growth, and you could use how much additional revenue you receive, less federal revenue, so any state revenue, local revenues that are in there. And you could either use your actual increase if you had it, and if you didn't, you could use, they gave a standard increase of 4.1%. What this is saying, it appears you can use it for any government service. But again, this still has to get through the House. So I did send this on to Dan Petticord. I'm not sure if he's getting these alerts himself. I'm sure he's trying to keep up on this, but this just passed October 19th. The Lorraine County Township Association has scheduled right now for their February meeting on the third Thursday is to actually everyone bring their list of proposed projects and use the ARPA funds so that people can share ideas on how to use them and find out who might have already had the approval and the review by the prosecutor's office so that we don't have 18 different townships sending things into the prosecutor's office, many of them being the same or slightly different, or maybe after working through it, they have to make a slight change to make it applicable, so it might not be what they originally intended, but by some modifications where they can use some of the funding. If this gets through prior to that, it might make it relatively moot. But you would still have to maintain the records, but now our records, Chris, would be predominantly the invoices coming out of the account that's set up for this if they provide this flexibility. I would also encourage that you contact our U.S. House reps. For us, it's Congressman Jim Jordan, but there's no reason why we couldn't also, since in Lorraine County we have Congresswoman Capter and Congresswoman Gibbs, we could always call in and ask for their support, but I just know that the way those congressional offices work, they do look for, are you a member of their district? So that they know they're hearing from people in their district. So they will record, even for Congressman Capter and Gibbs, they might record what your position is, but I can assure you they're going to note that you're also outside the district. But we really should call them because I think this will make it much easier for communities, much less concern about an audit happening a couple years from now. Because I know what I read in the local newspapers for some of the larger cities, that unless they've got a significant loss in revenues, many of the things that I see they keep throwing out to use these ARPA funds, they really don't seem eligible. So I don't know if it's a misunderstanding or if they're just throwing ideas out that haven't really been checked yet to say, hey, wait a minute, we really can't spend it on that if we read the letter of the law as it stands now. But this would make it much easier for them in taking care of that. So that'll be it as far as on the ARPA funds, unless there's any other questions on that. And you'll see later, Kevin, this might help us in one of the grants that you and Linda are working on right now as far as the timing, and we'll get into that. Okay, the last item under financials is you have a prepared resolution in your packet. Chris did receive the amounts and rates as determined by the County Budget Commission. This is a resolution that accepts the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor per revised code section 5705.34 through .35. And I'm just going to make the motion first to bring this to the floor. If I could have a second.
A second.
Okay, and hopefully you had a chance to review these over the weekend prior to this meeting. Most of this is pretty much cut and dry. You know what the inside and outside millage is spelled out there, and you can see the amounts that the Budget Commission is estimating that we will receive. The portion that's highlighted, that's just highlighted because our residents had just renewed that road levy that we have in place for the 1 mil. That's estimated to bring in $124,237. You know, that stays relatively fixed, even though, you know, there's new development going on in the township. That's a fixed levy, so you don't see that amount adjust too much. You know, so the reality is there's not a whole lot we have to decide on this at this time. We'll get into more details in our budgeting here as we, you know, get closer to the end of the year and see what our carryover is.
We have a first and second on the floor.
Yep, and if there are any
I'm
other
prepared to
questions?
vote.
Okay, and roll call,
Lynch?
Chris? Yes.
Yurick?
Yes.
Abraham?
Yes.
And the number, Chris?
10-8-21.
And you know what you have to do with this.
Yep.
Okay, correspondence, Chris?
I have none.
Okay, David?
I have nothing at this time.
Denny?
Nothing?
Okay, I have some, but it all deals with items on the agenda, so we're going to hold it until then. We'll move on to reports. Ambulance, Denny?
Nothing under ambulance?
Sheriff's not here. Zoning, Remy?
Zoning, we had 3 complaints, which I went out and checked on, and I'm working on those. And we had a total of 6 permits for the month so far, and housing still stands at 3 for the year. Couple of accessory buildings, some fences, and that's pretty much it. Also, the zoning met and they renewed the conditional use for Mr. Archie Abraham.
What was that for? What was it for?
The conditional use,
Yes.
that was for outside storage of material there at A&C Tire.
Okay,
He let that lapse.
okay.
Are there any other questions for Remy?
No, I have none.
Thanks, Remy. And actually, there were 4 complaints, but 2 of them dealt with the same home
Yeah, they were
and property
same-
maintenance
same house,
complaint.
yeah.
And Remy's going to look into those. You'll make sure that as you get the resolution, you notify the complainant also,
Yes,
and then I'll go ahead and close it. Now, I only had the 1 listed on the agenda under complaints because the other 3 just came in today.
right, correct.
Okay. Fire prevention's left. Roads, parks, and cemetery, Superintendent Smarsh.
I don't have too much to report here, but we're getting into leaf season here. They're starting to change in fall, so with the parks and cemeteries, we'll be keeping up on that. And we had dumpster days, which went well. Everything worked out real well there. It even lessened on the dumpsters that we had. It seems in the past 4 years now, every dumpster day, it's less and less. We only had 5.5 dumpsters filled for this session, and probably about 3/4 of the scrap metal dumpster was filled. So just noticed here, and you know, the past 6 years, it just keeps getting less and less and less, so.
You think that might have something to do with 1 week a month of free, you know, unlimited and large items?
That's, I definitely would put that towards the benefit of it, and people are just throwing stuff away more than holding on to it.
Mhm.
You know,
People are getting caught up with what they throw out, I guess.
Yeah, and complaints, people complain about it, so they have to throw it away. But even, with the remodeling of 2020 that went on, as in last fall, with the whole bunch of home projects that happened since everybody was home, you definitely knew people were working at home. But this round, there wasn't even, a lot of projects, say, decks, there was decks, things of that nature. And obviously, you could tell the garage cleans out, the scrap wood that's been laying around for a while, things of that nature. Less and less.
Okay, good.
But we've been crack sealing. We have two small concrete projects that we are to be pouring tomorrow. I spoke with Bob Zantz about the yard waste pile, and he's to take a look at it this week. He's hoping to be here for tomorrow, Wednesday, and he pretty much thinks that it can happen there about the mid to three-quarters of the way through November. So it's pretty sure it can all be taken care of.
How are we compared to years prior? Are we down?
No,
About the same?
I'd say about the same.
Is he
Got
in-
it.
getting-
Not as wide, but it's just as long as it usually is, but it's not as wide, but it's tall. It's the same amount as the past couple of years.
Has he given any indication what his rates will be? I know they've been creeping up.
No, but he did say that it was gonna be increased. So, we'll take a look at that. We had received the new slide, and the platforms for the park. We are receiving, with that grant, you guys talked about the game time earlier. Well, when that was delivered, I put it into the shop, and I obviously went over the packing list, and I thought that we still had a whole nother delivery left. It was all there. One little delivery, and it's that kind of dollar sign right there. Quite shocking how expensive that stuff is. But we are hopefully here within the next week, we'll have that all replaced. We did receive that grant for the cemetery. That is to be taking place in November, where we will work out in Kendig Corners, straightening out and rebasing stones out there with that grant money.
Okay, so for the cemetery, I guess I don't recall then the grant was approved?
Yes,
Okay,
2,500.
1,000.
yeah.
Was it 1,000 or
1,015. The
2,500?
2,500 was the NOPEC.
Oh, that was NOPEC.
Mm-hmm. I thought the cemetery was 1,000.
yeah, it's $1,000 for the grant because the estimate was 1.3 for the project.
Yes, that's it. Other than that, everything seems to be going smoothly, so that's all I have.
Okay, good, thanks, Kevin. Well then, if you look in your packet, this is where I said there'd be some communications that dealt with an item on the agenda, and this is with the ODOT Township Stimulus Program. This is that one-time program that's available to us. Kevin and Linda have been working together to get that grant application put together. It's due November 19th. We want to get it in well before that. I know Kevin's already gotten the photos to Linda, which are required for this, to show the project area and the condition of it. Linda's been writing up the grant. She's got the information for the road levy because one portion of the grant, they actually give you points in the scoring methodology if you have a permissive fee for license plates, which we don't. And but what we do have is we have a road levy. And at the last webinar, they'd even stated that if you did not have a permissive fee on the license plate, but you do have a road levy, to at least make note of that, because, so they don't show that as a point scoring, it's not going to be the decision-making that ODOT does when they review these grant applications is not going to be strictly based on that scoring methodology. And, you know, they inferred that if you have a road levy, they'll take that under consideration in terms of this application. So Linda is aware of that. What we're trying to get is the project schedule, which is required on there also. And in our situation, it's one of these things, you sound like a salesman when you say it depends, but it does. Because the first item we have is we know the county has a sanitary project on there that's going to run the sanitary line from the new Hampshire development south to K Drive. And if you read through this email string, which you can do at your leisure, I did not send this to all you guys because I was still going back and forth with Bob Kleiber from Lorraine County Engineer's Office, trying to get the information that Linda would need to put into the grant. And what Bob pretty much has indicated, since we don't want to pave the road before they put the sanitary in, they do expect to have that sanitary line from Hampshire Farms to K Drive installed this year. He did say weather permitting. Well, then later today, let's see, this was yesterday I received that information from Bob. Then just today, his Lorraine County Engineer's Office put out a notice in an email. I don't know who all received it. It's a large distribution. I'm going to assume that Kevin received it. I assume the trustees did, but I wasn't going to read through that distribution list. But I did print a copy of the attachment of the letter that's going to the residents. And I do know a few months ago the commissioners had approved the contract. They awarded the bid to Trimore Corporation for the installation of that sanitary sewer. They then also, subsequent to that, approved an amendment to that sanitary sewer construction. Well, this notice here lists the project manager for Trimore Corporation out of Twinsburg, Jacob Smith. It gives a phone number for residents to call. The biggest disruption they're probably going to have is getting in and out of their driveways. They also want to know if they've got any type of underground sprinkler system, invisible fences, whatever that might be disrupted, so that they can be marked and minimum impact to them on that. But according to this document from Trimore, they're actually planning to begin on November 1st. So Bob was hoping it would be done this winter. They're going to be right towards the end if they're starting November 1st and trying to get this done before the end of the year. And it's got the diagram shows where that sanitary sewer would be. But based on that information, I sent a schedule to Bob then, okay, if you get it done by this year, and then the assumption, because as Kevin has reported previously, they still had not done any engineering for the sanitary sewer going north of Hampshire Farms along Overland Road to State Route 2. And some conversation I had with one of the engineers, Lorraine County Engineer's Office, some time back, they still weren't sure if they were going to put that in, because there is a few number of existing homes there, and it's somewhat questionable if any of the open property there is developable at this time from a reasonable standpoint. I mean, obviously it could be developed, but you know, the economics doesn't appear that that would be that easy. Well, Bob did indicate, yes, they do plan on doing that. They would have the engineering done with the expectation of having it done in the summer of 2022. So with that being the case, now a definite that they're going to do it is I put a schedule together as if we resurface Overland Road in 2022 immediately following that sanitary installation. And that being the case, we would bid this in April, award the bid in May, with construction expected to happen in July. And Bob thought that would give them time, based on what they have now, to have the sanitary done, and we could still meet this. Realize in the conversation, and it's copied in that email string with ODOT District 3, you know, some of this is going to be weighed on who's ready to go to get their project done, not a project that's delayed, because this money must be spent by December 31st of 2024, the way they have this set up. But the issue is, with our available funding right now, is if ODOT only awards part of our request, we won't have enough funding to complete the whole project. Which means then we have two choices. We either, well, thank you very much, but you know, that's not enough money, we can't do it. Or we can reduce the scope of the project, but we'd have to have that written into the grant application. And Kevin had this bid from Lorraine County Engineer's Office, the estimates two different ways. One, to do the complete resurfacing of Overland Road from Middle Ridge to North Ridge, and then an alternative from Middle Ridge to the Route 2 overpass with Overland Road, then from the State Route 2 overpass Overland Road to North Ridge. Well, the way those numbers came in, if they only gave us a partial and we reduced the scope, the only one we could economically do would be from North Ridge, the State Route 2 overpass. That's a smaller piece, but that's also the piece that's been the least disrupted, either, you know, both the wear and tear that we've experienced on that road, and then also the open cuts that are going to occur with the sanitary sewer installation. So our preference is to do the part south of Route 2 and the whole thing if we can. So that being the case, we put in the second project schedule, and I've asked Linda to work with Jeff Rogers and Steve Shepard from ODOT District 3. Steve has indicated that go ahead and call them. I know the original they want things emailed, because I'm sure they're getting bombarded with questions from people. As the second project schedule is different, this is doing the whole project with the assumption that we also receive funding through OPWC Round 37 application. With that particular situation, you know, it's a guess, but if we delay that a year, the township might be able to increase their percentage contribution. With the ODOT stimulus, whatever portion they'd be willing to fund us, that reduces the overall cost. The total estimated cost for the full project is $191,500. So just figure $192,000 is we stand a better chance of getting funded in round 37. But that would mean we're finishing this project up in the summer of 2023, just before school starts. And our residents would have to experience another year of that road probably being a little bumpier than it is right now. And that's also a major thoroughfare for many people coming from Lorraine, cutting down that may work in Oberlin or cut over to Route 2 to get to Cleveland. But I just wanted you guys to see this. There's a lot of moving parts. Linda and Kevin are working to get all the information together to get this grant application done. Hopefully within the next week we can have everything in place, and also between Steve Shepard or Jeff Rogers at least give us some guidance on which direction to go that will improve our probability of success in being awarded grant funding, and also enough to make this viable that we can take this project on. Now tie that in with the U.S. Senate change on the ARPA funds. If that change goes through, it gives a big relief. Now we're not, you know, always watching the checkbook like, okay, do we have enough? What can we delay? What can we put off? Now we can say, okay, we can do this project even if we only get partial funding on this, and get the whole thing done at once, and get it done potentially in 2022 versus delaying it till 2023. So I just wanted you guys to have all this information. It's It's not that you're being avoided, but I didn't want a long distribution list on this when we're asking specific questions between the engineer's office and ODOT District 3, because I know some people get nervous when they see those big distribution lists of people they don't know, like who else is reading all this? Because once they put it in writing, you know, they also make a commitment, a semi-commitment.
I don't know if this would help, Neil, but one aspect, if you're trying to get a project that can be done in a short period of time, that's ready to go, is look at it from, this just occurred to me. I brought it up sooner, but it just occurred to me. You know, the section of Overland Road that's in question is from K Drive to Route 2, really. That's this section. If you split Overland Road into two sections, from K Drive south, and then from Route 2 north, do those two sections, and then leave that section, if that's going to be the drawback, if that's going to be the delay in the project, leave that section that's being torn up from K Drive to Route 2, leave that out and just do that later, if that's the difference between getting the funds and not. You know, that might be an idea, it might be a thought. It would just expand the scope from Route 2 north, expand that to Route 2 north and K Drive south.
Okay.
That might be an idea. Just put that, leave that section in the middle out, if that's going to cause a delay in us delaying the project, and thus preventing us from getting funding.
Okay,
See what I'm saying?
that is another thought. I just hope we don't have to do that just because of patchwork, but it is, if that's the way we have to go, you're right, David, that's another option. That'll be the worst part of the road once it gets all cut up. I'm really hoping that Jeff Rogers or Steve Shepard will give us some guidance of, hey, what's our probability? And I realize they can't make a commitment because they won't know. You know, it's going to depend how many projects, which projects are good projects. But we do have a deadline, November 19th, and we want to get it in well before that, so that there's nothing coming back, hey, we missed something, because if you're not complete and accurate, yours won't even be considered. And not knowing when the House is going to take up the Senate bill. You know, if that happens, we have nothing to worry about. We're clean. But we'll just see where it goes. But just so you guys are aware, you've already passed a resolution to apply for the ODOT Township Stimulus Program. They indicated in the webinar, as most grants usually require that resolution, this one does not. But remember, when we passed that, we said, let's get this passed, even though it currently didn't state we needed it, thinking, is that just an omission? Or are they later going to say they want the authorizing resolution? But that resolution is kind of open on what we do here. But we'll take that under advisement if it comes down to that, if we have to skinny this down even more. But anyway, you have all the information there on the ODOT stimulus round. I know Kevin didn't mention it, maybe he knew I was going to talk about it, or maybe he's just got so many different things going, he's getting confused.
Where are we at now?
We're going to the Phase 2 MS4 for stormwater now. I also want to let you guys know, and I didn't copy it because I was hoping Don Romankek would have emailed it out. I went to the Stormwater Advisory Committee meeting last Thursday, and they had a slight modification in the scoring criteria for the next application for the stormwater projects. Though this isn't in writing yet, it was discussed at that meeting. The SWAC group approved the new scoring methodology, still needs to be approved by the Board of Commissioners. I did get a paper copy of that, and it was stated that the next application round would be due March 31st of 2022. But we'll have to wait till Don Romankek actually puts out the real documentation where we have it in writing. I know that the Stormwater Advisory Committee was acting like that's a lot of time. That isn't a lot of time because, and I'm going to have to talk with Pete Sawick again, I've mentioned it to Pete multiple times about getting with us as to the portion, we know it's the Bad House Ditch now, coming south from the Engle Ditch is our next project, and the county even has that as one of their top priorities. But we haven't had any detail on it, unless Pete thinks he can come up with a reasonable estimate pretty quick that we're going to need for that grant. Plus, we got many more residents and property owners to contact than we did when we did the Engle Ditch and the Bat House Reach. Now, as opposed to a few large property owners, there's many more, smaller 1-2 acre parcels to deal with. So we'll be cutting across more property owners' lots in that. But I did put down a rough template with fill in the blanks of when we'll have to at least pass resolution so that doesn't slip. But just be aware that's going to come, so all I can say is watch your inbox. And another reason we want to get these other grant requests done because we're going to, right on the heels, have these new ones come in. Complaints, I'm going to skip complaints because Remy's already discussed these. I only marked the one because that was the one we had in on October 15th prior to this meeting. The other three just came in today, but one of those three deals with the same complaint on Deepwood that's already noted on the agenda. So with that, those are the items that we had to cover today. As far as the other items that are assigned specific responsibility, is there anything else we need to discuss?
I have 2 items under solid waste I want to bring forward right now, just to report that the policy committee did meet and began the review process for the plan update. Reviewed appendices A, B, C, and D. That was on the 19th, and on the 20th, the consortium met, and you should have a copy of that. I believe I left one in each of your seats. Shows the balance on the consortium revenue, and the fuel surcharge based on last quarter's diesel fuel average price that they use, it's going to remain the same for this quarter. You can expect an increase in the surcharge if the prices stay the same after this quarter, but right now it's the increase from when they bid the contract is just at 25 cents a gallon, and the threshold is 25 cents more or less, and it's right at that. So you would expect that probably after next quarter it'll be over 25 cents, and that'll kick in the fuel surcharge. So the fuel surcharge should go up. Should make the bill go up a little bit. So that's something to look forward, not look forward to, but something to expect, anticipate, and. That's what I'm going to report from the consortium.
Okay. And since that's based on total miles, and Sarah Matthews from Rumpke did put out the number of homes serviced in Amherst Township, which is just under 2,000, because not everybody partakes of this service, it's really probably going to amount to pennies on an increase for people. So, with the new formula, it's so small, it's not like before when we had those wild swings as fuel prices change. But, all right, thanks, David. Anything else?
No, just those 2 items I wanted to bring up.
Okay. Well, we do have a need for an executive session, and I know we're going to need Kevin. Denny, I'll leave it up to you. Do you want Remy here for that executive session?
Yes.
Okay, so Remy said yes. All right, I'm going to make a motion to enter into executive session. Let me find the right section here. For ORC section 121.22G, This is the one on properties, I just gotta find out what that is. To 121.22G2, to consider the purchase of property for public purpose, and then I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but it's that section, Chris.
Okay.
All right, really, if you just get that first clause, that'll probably cover it. Okay? But that'll be my motion.
I'll second it.
Covered up because we never go to that section.
Lynch?
Yes.
Abraham?
Yes.
Yurick?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make a motion to return to the regular meeting from executive session at, I'll say 8:50 PM.
Second.
Lynch?
Yes.
Yurick?
Yeah.
Abraham?
Yes.
Okay, our next meeting will be on Tuesday, November 9th, 7 o'clock. At this point, there's no work session unless we're able to schedule something with Pete. Is there any other business?
No.
Okay, if none, then can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Yurick?
Yes.
Abraham?
Yes.
Lynch?
Yes.